Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar with insight on the subject of the General Data Protection Regulation from the European Union. My name is Stephen Love. I'm the Security Practice Lead from the Insight, and I'm going to take you through this short webinar on our take on what GDPR means for us and for our customers. So just give you a quick overview of the agenda. I'm going to be going through business drivers and challenges about the EU GDPR, our recommendations, how we can help, and any questions you may have. So first off, some of the challenges we see in the market today around security. There are a lot of breaches and organisations that are attacked from a cyber perspective. That we're seeing a number of high-profile organisations that are breached in a number of different ways, and a lot of data has been lost. And similar to this, we see a lot of news reports about organisations that have been affected by this type of attack. Last year, Ashley Madison completely went out of business because of the attack and the loss of data through their website. And we've seen a number of other high-profile breaches that have occurred across the 2015. Currently today, and this is a live website tracker from a website called Breach Level Index, we've lost over 4 billion records since 2013, and that's quite a high number. However, when you think this is only a number that has actually been identified by known breaches, there is a whole host of unknown breaches that have occurred where organisations haven't had to actually divulge this information. So this number, as time moves on, will probably raise quite considerably. Data has become a form of currency in terms of cyber criminals. They're going after our sensitive information, our medical records, our financial details, our Facebook accounts, any piece of information of any specific piece of user identifiable information is now monitorized by hackers. And it's this kind of industry that we're having to protect organizations against. So some business challenges that all organizations need to face. So you've got the regulations that are out there, things like PCI compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley, and some of the data protection regulations that are already in countries. You've got the high-profile press headlines that we see on almost a daily basis now in terms of organizations have been hacked and breached. We've got the reputation of an organization, opportunities from a business perspective, expectations of customers, the growth of our data. We're seeing a huge exponential growth in the amount of data that we're storing, and as time goes on, that amount of data is growing at a considerable rate. We're seeing obviously the threat landscape evolving, as I've just previously mentioned, around different threats and that kind of thing that's happening in the market today. The rise of ransomware of recent months. Also, the fact that we've got a lack of visibility and control in most of our networks around what organisations can actually see and do and understand what's going on the network. And then we've got emerging technologies that have been developed to actually counteract this. All of this is a challenge for businesses today because there's a whole unknown around what they should be doing and how they should be doing it. So what is the EU GDPR? So essentially, it's been designed to replace the data protection authorities' regulations across the current 28 European Union states. Obviously, with the recent decision for the UK to leave Europe, has thrown this kind of argument into disarray. However, irrespective of whether or not we're in the EU or not, we're still bound by this data regulation because it's applicable to anybody who holds EU data. So the EU data regulation looks at a number of things. The first thing is consent. So as an individual, I have got the right to request my records to be deleted from an organisation's database. So, for example, if I wanted to go to Amazon, where I buy a lot of music and videos and that kind of thing, I can go to them and I have all records of my all records of mine removed from their databases. This is always going to be a problem for organisations that are storing data in multiple different locations. They need to obviously find that data, understand where that data resides, where they've backed it up, and I've got the right to be able to ask for them to remove any element of that data, so that I have no record of ever working with or dealing with Amazon. You've then got the disclosure. So the disclosure of a breach has to happen within 72 hours under the new data regulation. In most cases, some of the high-profile breaches that we saw last year weren't even identified the fact that the organisation was breached within 72 hours. I think the average time in the industry is about 200 days that a breach goes unnoticed. And with these new regulations in place, we need to be able to respond to this quicker. And it's not just about identifying the fact that we've been breached, it's also identifying what's been lost, how that's impacting our customers. And then probably the worst thing on this list is the penalties. And in some instances, these penalties are going to be quite severe. Anything up to 4% of organisations' global turnover. So even if we see a breach within the UK, for example, for a small UK entity, the actual fine levied will be based on the global turnover for that business. So if there are a huge American company with a small office in the UK and they're breached by cyber terrorists or cyber hackers, and they lose some data, the fines are going to be quite severe for them. So what is the purpose of the GDPR? It's to consolidate the multiple data protection rules that are currently in place across the European Union states, because a number of these rules are fundamentally either almost non-existent, the rules are outdated, there's information there that doesn't actually pertain to the modern environment, and also the amount of different threats that are out there are obviously changing the way that we need to actually protect data, and also the growth of the data as well. So what's the timescales on this? When do we need to be compliant? So first off, the regulation was adopted earlier this year, which gives us until May 2018 till we need to become completely compliant with this, or we actually adhere to this regulation. So as of May 2018, we need to start talking about if we're breached, actually identify the breach, disclose that breach, and then potentially be fined for that. So that gives us roughly about 24 months, 2 years to actually prepare for that regulation. And in some cases, I think organisations can be quite blasé and think, well, that's plenty of time, we've got the ages yet, we don't need to think about this. But because of the scope of the regulation, the fact that we need to protect customer data, that may be actually not enough time for some organisations to get ready because of the sprawl of their data arrays, what they're actually, the data they're holding, where they're backing it up, all those kinds of things. So there's going to need to be a lot of attention paid to the whole process around this. So who's going to be affected? So you've got a number of different people within a business that are getting affected by this. So you've got the data holders themselves, so people are storing and holding data. You've got the processors of that data, so people are actually accessing that and utilising that data, sort of data analytics, monitoring the data as it's being used, that kind of thing. And then the data and the subjects, the people who actually that data is about. So the European citizens that the data is actually being held for. So you, me, and anyone else within the UK or anyone across Europe. Then there's a new stakeholder that's been kind of introduced into the whole regulation, and it's this role of what they call a data protection officer. And the idea around a data protection officer is essentially to be the person within the organisation who's responsible for protecting the organisation's data and helping adhere that organisation to the new data protection regulation. This doesn't mean that every single organisation out there needs to go out and hire someone new to actually fulfil this role. This role can obviously be fulfilled by somebody within the business already, someone in a sort of financial area of the business, or the chief security officer or something similar at the moment. So what can you do? So there's a number of things that I think you need to be able to sort of look at. First off, you need to identify and understand where your data is within your business. So, where are you holding that customer data, where it sits on your environment, where it sits on your network, and then be able to understand who's accessing that data. And also from where, who, and where that data should be accessed. So, for as an example, if you're a financial organisation, should everybody be able to access those financial records? Or if your HR department, should everybody be able to access those records, or just the HR people who should have access to those kind of records on a daily basis? So understand where your data is, understand what your key data is, understand who has access to that data. And then also you need to identify where that data flows. So is that data just on the internal corporate network? Are you backing that corporate data up to a cloud service, for example, to a hosted data center somewhere? And then consider your users and your clients' privacy wherever possible. Look at your current security policies that are in place, identify any risks that are in the business currently, and then define your own mitigation and response strategy around this. And then also create a detection response plan. So just to confirm some of those previous statements, so the recommendations that I would make is improve your current security, implement some kind of identity and access management platform so you can identify who the user is, what the roles and rights are on the network, and what systems they have access to. Implement an encryption solution. So if you're encrypting your data, you're adding that additional layer of protection. Establish a strong external threat protection platform so you can look at those advanced threats and those new threats, and also look at threats that they happen from different parts of the world. So things like using geolocation. So if you're a UK-only organisation, don't allow any connections from anyone outside of the UK or maybe the European Union, so you can actually control that. And then also manage the encryption keys that are used there as well. And then enhance your visibility and control of your network. So to be able to actually respond to the regulation around disclosure, and to be able to admit the fact that you've been breached, when you were breached, how you were breached, you need to be able to have visibility and control of your own network. So understand who's come into your network, how they can connect into your network, what they've done when they've been on the network. So you can then go back and do some forensics and understand when a breach occurred, how it got into your business, what that threat did as it came in, or that vulnerability, what machine it accessed, how it then traversed from there through the network, and how it moved on to your servers and access to your data, and when and how did they try to exfiltrate that data as well. So how can Insight help? So just going back to the previous slide around the GDPR. So there's two things that we've actually got to assessment services we've already got in our kit bag that are available to actually help you start on that journey of to the adhering to the GDPR. So the first one is what we call a data assessment, and this is all about understanding where your data is stored, how your data is stored, what is your key data, who accesses that data, and this helps so you can govern then things like backup policies and be able to control, okay, of my data, what percentage of that am I actually backing up, what percentage of it is important to me, but similarly what percentage do I need to not worry about. That information then we can then feed into the kind of planning stages of the GDPR assessment, and then look at the security side of things. So once we understand where your data is and what your data is and who should access it, we can then help you build strong security policies around that data to then help you build that ecosystem of security to start protecting you against the EU GDPR. And this is then released as a separate service. So we've got a discovery workshop that we can kick off in the first instance, help you start to guide you through that process of where you need to go around the adherence to this regulation. And then we've got the 2 assessment services that help you in a lot more detailed way to actually get to the stage where you can understand, what your data is and who should have access to it, and then how you can then start to protect that. So we've got a number of other services that we can help in that as well. So beyond the assessment services themselves around the security and data assessment, we can help you with the prevention side of things. So we've got a number of different services and capabilities in and around the prevention side. So that's just edge firewalls and the IPS function, content control, that kind of thing, authentication and access. We've also got network access control, so actual physical controls and physical networks, so wireless, wired, or via a VPN. So you're actually controlling who should have access to your network, when they should have access to your network. Then moving on, we've got the detection and mitigation, which is all about the endpoint client, so not just antivirus, but also that zero-day protection around looking for behavior on an endpoint, what looks bad, so not just what's known to be bad, but what actually is behaving incorrectly on an endpoint. So as an example, if you're, for example, downloading a PDF, that PDF should act in the way a PDF should. It's not trying to, create a call home to a server out in China, for example, or doing anything else malicious on the network. Then enabling sensors on the network, so you can then monitor data as it traverses from endpoints from the network onto servers and storage and through firewalls, intelligent alerting and quarantining of malicious content and malware. And then our recovery and forensics area looks at more in detail about intelligent logging and then breach remediation and forensics, all around looking at those breaches, how they've occurred, being able to deploy people on site to actually assist you with understanding what's happened, so you can then obviously disclose that to the European regulatory body. That is then building on the pillars we've got in our security practice today, which looks at the plan. So the planning stages include the discovery and the assessment services, and the ability to help you and consult with you to guide you through the process of getting to delivering the right services. We've then got our build capabilities, which look at a number of different services that help you and guide you through that whole process, and then our managed services, which look at helping you understand and do some of that monitoring capability around a SIM type service and also some response management, etc. And we're covering that across a number of different pillars of security. So I'm just going to check the questions and answers if anyone's actually asked any questions. So there's no questions. I don't know if anyone else wants to ask anything. Okay, if there's no questions, I'll close down this webinar. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and hopefully you learned something on this. If there's anything else that you would like to understand or talk about, if you contact your Insight account manager, they'll be able to obviously put you in contact with me, so we can obviously discuss the GDPR regulation in a little bit more detail. So I'd like to thank you for your time and wish you a very good day. Thank you very much.